So anyway, my name is Joe Feser. I'm going to show you some things. There's some things that I really struggled to try to even figure out how to do in SourceTree. Dan wanted me to try to show some things in SourceTree. I prefer for doing any GUI stuff in Windows, and I will be using the Zoom It for this. So you know, when it's in this mode, you won't be able to see much. Most of the stuff I do when it comes to the GUI is in Git extensions. I am not a command line expert. Matt over there is probably going to be the command line expert. He could probably name off all the commands, so I'll probably look like a schmuck on some of this stuff. But Git was pretty unusable in Windows unless you were a command line person until probably 3 years ago. It was horrible in Windows. It's pretty rock solid now. So again, the first thing you need to do, and this is probably the only thing I'm going to tell you to do, is you need to make sure you have the latest version of Git installed, and that you can get at git-svn.com. And it will automatically detect that you're using Windows, so it'll tell you to download. And what's crazy about this, it says 2.3, but it's actually 1.95. Don't ask. It is. I don't know what the deal is. 1.95 when you are in the command the GUI the git bash shell, it's going to show you that you're using 1.95. This is the latest version on Windows. I don't know what to tell you. So the first thing is there's multiple. Basically, how many people have used Git? How many people have not used Git? Because everybody understands the basics on how to create a repository, and most people are familiar with what the difference between local and remote is. We don't have to go over any of those concepts. The thing that trips up most people in Git is the fact that when you check things in to Git, they're not really checked in. Nobody else can see them. I mean, almost everybody here in the last month, I've been in like, you need to push this stuff up. They're like, no, I checked it in. It's like, it's on your machine. It's not pushed up. No, it's actually in the local. So the thing about Git is everything is a branch. The branches are remote or the branches are local. Even though they're copies, everything is a branch. So imagine TFS, and then when you pull TFS down, you literally were to take the entire TFS database and take the entire thing and take it to your machine and cut the internet off. And you still had access to everything that happened in TFS. That's how Git works. Like when you pull down the repository, you've literally pulled down the history of everything that's ever happened in that project. Everything. And that kind of freaks people out. People are like, well, the person can just walk out the door. Well, you can walk out the door with TFS code too. I can run a script against TFS and script the entire database too. I mean, there's this whole, oh, Git's not secure. No, TFS is no better. I mean, there's 100 tools, including GitTF, that Microsoft wrote, that you can scrape the entire TFS database out into Git and walk out the door if you had to. So that argument is not relative, or not an issue. So still politically might feel like an issue, but and then there's SVN, which hopefully nobody's still using. Tree conflicts. I am the king of tree conflicts in Subversion. I can get one at least once an hour. So, how many people use Git Bash? How many people don't use the Bash script, the Bash shell at all? Everybody's at least used the shell at least once. Okay, cool. So here I'm in master. So I downloaded a couple repos so I can show you some of the other things of how I pull down multiple people's forks. So basically to initialize a new Git from the command line, this is pretty much how you create a new repository, right? So the big thing is I'm going to do this in here because it's going to be easier than So I'm going to create a README file, and we're going to just version this over time. So, if you're using, what's nice about SourceTree app, SourceTree is nice enough to do a refresh. So as you're sitting here, in SourceTree app, it's nice enough to show you when things are, in the case of in this particular thing, things are getting ready to source tree app. So there's two different big source vendors out there for doing free repositories. There's Bitbucket, which is Atlassian, which is the same company that writes Jira, and then there's GitHub. Source tree is Bitbucket's attempt on writing a Windows client. Their Mac client is much better than their Windows client.
That's the way we use it.
Yeah, we use
That's the default one.
They're responsive too on help. If there's a feature missing,
They are.
I've written help and they've added the feature like in 2 weeks. It's really surprising.
You have that much clout.
What's that?
You have all that clout.
Just luck, I think, more than anything.
We're a paying customer.
Yeah.
If you have a free account, trust me, you're getting the guys in India.
You get an email and ask for file history. You don't know how to talk about it. Doesn't show you file history.
Actually, I found how to get to it. It's called log, because log is
Log. Oh.
yes, right. And I know there's probably a way to do this in the command line. Yeah, trust me, you don't even know how much stuff I discovered in the last 2 days.
Command line is just get log, and then get the file name. And it'll show you the history for that file.
Well, I want it, I'll show the history thing when I'm talking about where I like it over the thing. But normally, if you're using, and I don't know how to, I don't know how to do this in Source Tree app, but normally every single thing that like with Windows, most of the time you're going to be doing, Visual Studio and you're going to be doing Microsoft type stuff. So what's nice about Git extensions is it has like all the different the default things that you're going to want to ignore, because most people remember the source safe days, and somebody's nice enough to check in the OBJ files and the bin folder, and then all of a sudden like nobody can, and then they have exclusive checkouts and nobody can compile without putzing around with the folder. Yeah, so by default, you want to add in Git extensions, when you open up the repository for the first time, it's going to come up and say, hey, do you want to edit your .gitignore file? And then what's also nice is, and this is something I also don't see here, is it doesn't show you that there's files that are pending. There is if you were to do so from the command line, if you do a git status, it'll tell you that there's 2 files that are in the process of needing to be committed, but I don't see a visual indicator in source tree. On the initial commit, it'll tell you after that there's uncommitted changes. But in Git extensions, it's nice enough to tell you here, that there are 2 files that need to be added. So what's nice here is, what's interesting about Git also is there's a concept of the files that are being changed, and then you can actually stage those changes. Like with SVN, and I don't know if TFS does this, it might have changed by now, but you can actually stage a line of a change of a file. You don't have to stage the entire file. So if you just want to take line 1 that's been changed and leave everything else alone, you can literally take that chunk of that file and stage that as a check-in and check that in as a hotfix or whatever you want to call it. Where, like with a lot of other source control systems, you have to like do the whole, it's like, well, you made the change, so you do this thing where you copy it out, you put it where you want it, you check in, then you forget to put it back and you lose your file.
So is that something you added to your source tree program? You're talking about these extensions?
No, it's called Git extensions. That's the actual name of the program.
And that's a different
That's
program
that's a different GUI
for,
for doing visualization of Git source control.
but not Bitbucket.
You can use it with
You can use it with Bitbucket, but it's not written by Bitbucket. So Git extensions actually, in theory, will run on the Mac and on Linux. I've never tried it, but it's compiled against, there's a mono build for it. Have you ever tried it in mono? You're all command line? I'm sorry. You drink more than I do.
One of the nice things about Git is that all the information that needs to be known locally is part of the Git definition. So it doesn't matter which client you pick, they're all going to work against the same folder, right? You can flip back and forth between.
And that's what I'm doing here. I'm showing.
Extensions, source tree, all against the same repository locally, and they'll all show you the same stuff because they're all based off of Git information and not adding any other fluff on top of it.
So of course we're going to really have a heck of a time today with source tree.
Kill that and we'll do it.
Is that the problem?
Oh yeah, Bitbucket's having issues with hosting today.
Well, I'm all offline today, thank God. But so, I'm here and I'm not seeing why, like, where's my checking that I just did? Okay, well, trust me, there's a commit right there, and if I do a git log, there is a log. I actually did a commit. Well, so source tree is really going to be a pain today. So what I'm going to show you here is a lot of people have probably done. So let me show you what I mean by you can do partial check-in. So I'm going to make us two different line changes in here, and then should probably just use the up arrow key, right? So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stage, but I don't want to stage this line here. I don't want to stage this line 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unstage the selected lines. Source tree does a better job of this. They actually show it in chunks. So I'm going to unstage line 3. So literally what I'm doing is I'm just taking that line 2. This literally now, at this point in time, shoot, you guys can't see that. To this file up here, that's the one sitting on the drive, it thinks that there's a change for that line 3. I have a staged check-in for my README file that's not been committed. It's been staged to be checked in. That actually has the line 2 check-in, and I'm not sure what status will show. It just shows that there's a modified. So I've done this before because I've had to do forks, and I'm not forks, branches before, so I've done it where I've done a partial check-in, done a branch off of that. It's unfortunate I can't type with Zoom it running. So I have, if I could, so I have 3 check-ins. What I really like, and if I can get source tree app to work,
So are check-ins the same thing as commits? Or are you just using a different term?
yeah, a check-in is a commit. I don't know what to tell you about source tree app.
I'm saying,
Huh?
kill your bookmark there.
Kill the whole bookmark?
Yeah.
This one too?
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you want to be embarrassed to be a WPF developer, here's a great WPF application for you.
Yeah.
All right, so now, this is probably why the people here in the office are going, I really hate Git. Can we use TFS? And the answer is no. So, and I'm sorry I can't zoom this here. So what's interesting about this is I wanted to know, like, has anybody ever wondered, like, what's the difference, the master difference between check-in A and check-in B, and there's like 15 check-ins in between? You can actually do a control click, and it will actually show you all the differences that have been made between those 2 check-ins. So if you have 15 different check-ins, it'll show you all the file names down here, and then you can click on every single file name individually, and it'll show you what the master diff of all those diffs are. Because in your head, you're like, God, I know I changed this, then I changed, and you're trying to keep it, and that's what's nice. You can literally just pick 2 points in history and just say, show me the difference.
That's another reason too why it's good to label everything correctly. Like added this gem or did this. Or
Well, and I'll show you how to kill history too, which makes it even better. So same with Git extensions. So you literally, what's even more cool about Git extensions, source tree does not do this. You can actually find out what to get rid of if you had to undo your change. So it's based on the order that you actually check the items. So you notice how it says that I added all these. Dan, you got a meeting coming up. You notice how it's showing all the different things that have been added. What if you want to find out what I got to get rid of? So you check, you click on your newest one first, and you click on your oldest one last. It actually shows you what you have to get rid of. This does not work in source tree app. You can do this in the command line too. It's really just using git log behind the scenes with a bunch of switches. I don't know what the switches are. I tried to figure them out the other day. So I like keeping things checked in, like with many check-ins like this, so that I can just transition things over time. What's also really cool is when it comes to branching, You know, you could probably do this with TFS also, is you don't have to branch off the newest thing. You can branch at any point in time. So pretty much every check-in is just something that happened at one period of time, and you can make a branch off of that happened at any period of time. So I've had situations where people are like, oh shoot, I want to do a branch, but I want the branch to happen in something that I did yesterday. And I don't know if TFS, do you always have to branch off the latest, or can you just pick any version in history? So cool. So same thing. So if I want to create a branch off a second check-in, if you're in Git extensions or in source tree app, you make sure you select the check-in that you want to branch from, and then you say create new branch. And this here is the SHA hash of the actual branch itself. So it's going to actually create the branch based on that commitment. So I'm going to call this, we're going to create a test. So right now, I created a new branch called test at my second check-in, and then when you, if at the command line, you can do it either way, but usually the GUI apps, when you branch, it assumes you want to change to that branch at the same time, so it's going to change you. So right now I'm actually in the test branch. So if I were to go back to my text editor, you'll notice that my third check-in is gone because I'm actually now at an older point in history. Does that make sense? And then, oddly enough, you can now merge. So see, source tree is nice enough to auto refresh. You have to do the F5 game in Git extensions. That's the only kind of pain in the rear end. But let's say now I'm in test, right? And I want to, what did I call it in the third check-in? Third. So I'm in a new branch. I type in third. I want to do a commit. So I have this thing. I've now changed the same line in two different spots, but the check-in just happened to be the same. What's interesting about Git, in most of the cases, again, it depends on whether or not you leave a new line at the end, but because everything is based on the hash of what's changed and where the lines have changed, 99% of the time, as long as you don't have the extra character return on one and you know they're both exactly the same, I can actually do this, where I can say merge. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually merging the master. You always want to make sure that when you're in these GUI apps, or if you're in the command line, you're in the branch that you want to bring the stuff into. And then you always choose where you want it to come from. So I told it to merge from this where this blue thing is. I want to bring that into my test branch. And in this app here, whatever's the bold and whatever's the pink, and you can change the colors, is where you're currently at. In source tree, it's whatever's bold is where you're at. So, and it doesn't always have to be at the top, it's just whatever's bold.
And that's your target or your source?
Yeah, I don't like the wording of how they do this. So my target is test. My source is master.
Okay. So the one you're starting from,
So
when you're highlighting?
the one that I'm starting from, the source, is the one I'm highlighting.
Okay.
The one that I'm currently at is what I'm merging into.
Okay.
So I'm merging from here, this older check-in, into my latest check-in. And in theory,
So you're merging into your branch right now?
I'm merging from master into test,
Into your branch?
into my branch. And they just happen to be the same change.
Oh, okay.
So normally you would think that's going to be a merge conflict because you've had two different changes from two different sources, but because it was the exact same change and there is no difference, it literally just it did a check-in without doing a merge conflict. So technically the net result of this merge is nothing. If you notice down here in the pane, there's nothing, because technically nothing, come on, there you go. So technically nothing changed because I merged into what I already had. The net difference hash was nothing. And then if I would have told it to fast forward, which means don't try to create a merge, the only reason why you even see that that last check-in up on top is because I always like to say create new check-in, even if you can merge it in successfully, because I like to see when somebody, some people don't like this, they get crazy because the lines start going all over and it becomes, but you physically see when somebody actually made the mental effort to go, I am taking this and combining together, even if the net result's the same. There's the other concept, which is sometimes the default, depending on your app or depending on, I don't know what it is in the command line, probably fast forward is probably the default. Fast forward means if I had 20 check-ins over here and 10 over here and nothing conflicts, just push them all together like they're all together in the same family and just let them move on, you know, in the same path. Okay.
I have a question. It might be off topic, so you can
Yep.
move to the end if you want to. But can you explain the difference between a clone and a fork and a branch? Like,
Technically, they're all the same. So a clone and a fork are really just depending on what term people are using. But pretty much what you're doing is you're taking the repository from whoever had it first and you're copying it somewhere else. So whether that's on your local machines, so like on GitHub they call it a fork. So you're forking somebody else's work into something that you have access to. The fork actually knows who it came from. It knows the original origin. So in the event that you wanted to do a pull request, it says, well, this original repo is where you got this code from. By default, you probably want to do your pull request back to that repository.
but I don't think. Well,
So now you have, you say, yeah. So the fork is the original is the stem of the fork, and you're out here on one of the fingers.
right.
You know what fork you belong to, unless you call up support and you can have them kill that reference, or you can repush it. But
I was just having issues. Like, since I'm on a fork, like I've made a fork for this project,
Mhm.
it won't let me commit. Like, I'll have to do a pull request to commit. Is what I thought it would interesting.
Yeah, that's a GitHub concept, though. It's not, that's really.
the whole reason for here's the biggest reason why they are using that workflow, and GitHub themselves actually uses this workflow. They don't want anybody to have access to it. They want somebody to be in control of who does the merge. So the only way to control that is to make everybody do a fork of the master, make a change, and then do a pull request. And somebody has to authorize that pull request to be pulled back into their version, aka the original source of that thing. And that's done because, think about it, imagine if 100 people are all doing work on a project, you had to add 100 people, somebody gets canned, and I made this mistake once, is somebody forgets to go and deletes the user, you realize 6 months later that they still have access to the repo. The permissions on GitHub suck. So with forks, pretty much you can let them do pull requests all day long, just ignore them. If you don't want them to have access, if you don't want to take their code, you just don't accept the pull request. And that's the nicest thing about source, like Microsoft was known in the old days. They set up that Codeplex and everything was going to be great, and you saw how well that worked. But they never taken any code. They just don't do anything. They're just like, here's a dump of some guy's machine and on day whatever, and they just never update it. And then you're like, there's a bug, and they're like, okay, we'll fix it. And all of a sudden, a month later, you see there's another big dump, but it never shows that you contributed to that. With using GitHub or Bitbucket or anything, and maybe SourceTree will get there, or maybe Codeplex will get there one day also. Like they moved the core CLR and everything to GitHub, so that if somebody, like I made a contribution on day one because they were looking for apps that were being used. I don't remember what they did, but I forked the repo. I made a whole bunch of changes and added all these open source apps that are using a particular technology that they wrote, and then I did a pull request, and they pulled it in within the first day of having the source out there. So it actually shows me as being some of the contributors for some of that stuff, and that's how you do it. You fork it, you make your change, you check it in your origin, and then you do a pull request. But yeah, that's probably for security reasons.
Okay.
So let's say that you, sorry Dan.
Thanks, Jay.
Yep. So I'm back in test. So I want to so you can change branches pretty easily. What's interesting about, I really wish they'd use the same command. If you just do a get checkout master, and Marty, this is the problem we had that one time, when you change branches by default in the command line, it doesn't do a reset of the files. So if you do a -- force, it pretty much says change to wherever the head of that branch is, and then go and get those files and put them on the drive. It's different than TFS. Like TFS, when you have a branch, you physically have like 2 different directors in your hard drive that have these files. With Git, everything is in place in the same folder. So I don't know, I must have been tired that day. We kept getting latest and none of us could see the latest code. Well, we were like in an older branch in the second or third check-in, and we're just like, where are all these files at? And if you do a force, it'll take you to the head, or you can do a git reset -- hard, and then that will also do the same thing. You can do it as 2 commands. They'll both get you to the same place.
The other difference, though, is the force or the reset actually will discard any local changes you have
Yes.
that are not committed. So be real careful.
Well, I
when you
think
do it.
force will ask you first you're about to lose some changes, right?
I don't know. I've never used force. With
I know
reset out.
I know reset hard's like, screw you, you told me hard, that's your own fault. Like mixed will do like, well, we'll keep your stuff here, we don't know what to do with it, but we're gonna change everything else we can.
Yeah. Well, and if you have no local changes, git check out of a new branch will switch you to it.
Yes.
It's got no local changes to worry about. The problem is if you've got local changes, it doesn't want to overwrite them.
Right.
Yeah, that's the important thing to get in all, is you shouldn't be doing checkout branch if you have any changes.
Right.
This screws a lot up. You shouldn't do that in any source control.
Well, I mean, I've done it where I'm in the middle of doing something and I'm just like, I really want this to be in another branch, and I'll say, create branch.
Well, creating, that's different. You're creating something that doesn't exist, but if you want to switch.
Oh yeah, if you want to switch, yeah, you're not following the basic workflow.
Yeah.
So to make this faster, make some really quick changes, I want to show you Squash. Have you done Squash yet, Marty?
Yeah, I looked into it. Trying to do the concept of the developer was working on a branch on one of the Squash.
I could not.
All of his commits into one commit, so that his feature was
Yep,
just one
yep.
commit rather than
It,
14.
it took me, embarrassingly enough, it took me about 4 hours yesterday to figure out how to do that in source tree. I can do it in command line and I can do it in Git extensions in 20 seconds, and it took me 4 hours to figure out in source tree.
Well, it wasn't a feature in source tree for quite a while.
Yeah. So if you want to, if you're going to do a lot of quick, if you want to do a Git, I really thought you could do shorthand. It's going to be a lot quicker to do this. Let me set this up real quick to do.
Commit.
Git commit. You know, like I was talking about the Lenovo key. I like everything on the Lenovo except for the keyboard. So normally it would be faster. See, so this app will never in a million years ever update. So I'm in master. Source tree app, if you give it 5 or 10 seconds, it says I'm going to go out and look at it. So I'm going to go and create, I'm going to six. So when you do a git add, what it's doing is it's staging that change, and then when you actually commit it with a message, you all right, so let's say that you have this third change and you have this fourth change and you have this fifth change, and let's say that you for some reason want to combine those things together into one checkout or one check-in, because you keep in mind, don't do this once you actually push it anywhere. Once you push this thing to master, don't do what I'm about to do. If you've already pushed this somewhere and you do this, really bad things are going to happen. Everybody else in the team is going to be really lost. and then even after you do that, it's going to actually tell you you really screwed yourself. And if you click on the I don't care that you're warning me not to push it to the server again, a lot of people are going to have a hard time trying to get back to where they were at. That's all I'm going to say for now. So I'll show you how to do this in Git extensions because it's easier. If I don't know why you have to, so things at the bottom are called the parents. Everything at the the higher you are, like the more recent your check-ins are, those are children. So this is a parent, the second is a child of the first, the third is of a child of the second. Whenever you do things that are related to the children, like when you're going to squash, you have to pick the check-in before the check-in that you want to do it for. So if I want to combine 4 and 6, I actually have to go down to, again, I'm in master, I'm over here, and for me, see the dots are for the current branch. So I want to combine, or I can even go even one step farther. I can combine 1 through 6 as long as I don't want to merge, and everything will just magically work. So if you wanted to do a squash, you right-click on the check-in before you want to squash it. And what's nice is anything that goes wrong here, you can just undo it. So if you get, like, until you hit commit, and commit it, you can just say, I totally hosed it up, and you can undo this. So, you know, when it takes you 15 times the first time to get this to work in source tree, and I'll show you why that sucks so bad in a minute. Where is the, yeah. For whatever reason, it's under advanced. No. Right. Both the GUIs suck for doing squashing. We're actually, I'm not kidding you. Why is because it's actually an interactive rebase, and that's why they call it squash, but really you're doing an interactive rebase, and that's why they make you rebase it. Huh? In Git extensions, in source tree, you actually tell it to squash. In Git extensions, you have to rebase interactively, and sadly enough, it's not even the default. You actually have to click on advanced, and then you have to click on interactive rebase, and then you click on rebase, and it goes and figures out what you want to do, and this is where it gets to be really good time. So it pops up a command line, it pops up a little window here, and you can decide per check-in what you want to do with it. So if you had like 15 check-ins here and you wanted to keep 5 of them, but you wanted to squash other ones, you can literally just change. So I am going to squash the 4th check-in into the 6th check-in, and I want to reword. So this is allowing me to actually reword the check-in commit and actually squash the other one into this one at the same time, and I did it backwards. Even though 6 is before 4, I don't know why they reverse them this way. I don't like rebasing. I'm showing you the rebasing because some people like to combine their merges. I don't like rebasing. So I told it to squash the one, reword the other one. I'm going to say 2 check-ins. And what I'm actually doing is here is, so you see here it says the commit edit message. So behind the scenes, it's running the command line saying, I'm going to take that text file, and I'm not going to use that to actually commit the actual changes. And then, because I told it to redo the check-in, it gives me one last chance to actually change the wording. You just edit the file, make it to where you want the check-in, and then now 4 and 6 disappeared, and it's now 1 check-in called 2 check-ins. So at this point, you've rewritten your history. This is why, if you've already pushed it up to the master, to the origin, if you do this, like, really bad things happen because your heads are now different. So the hashes are of the head, the last check-in, the top check-in is now different. If somebody has already then pulled that check-in and done other stuff, you're going to have this really, really hot mess to try to clean it up. I mean, it's possible, but everybody's going to hate you.
Great power comes great responsibility.
Like I always say, if you want to commit a crime and make sure it never happened, just do it in Git, because you can just make it disappear. I mean, you can just never happen. Sorry. So I'll show you how to do that real quick in Git in source tree. Okay, so I created 3 more check-ins, right? So in source tree, you have to be really careful with this one. With so we're going to do a rebase. We're gonna squash the commits. You have to do a rebase children of what you want to do interactively. You choose the check-in before you want it to be the one that you want to merge. So actually, I'm going to choose. So I have 4 check-ins, right? I have that original one that I just squashed in Git extensions, which is the one I took line 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? And then I have my 7, 8, and 9. So I'm thinking to myself, you know, you can do weird stuff, like you can drag and drop stuff, and you're just like, what just happened? And so, like, you can just combine these things together and they become squashed. But now what's happened is they're actually, you can reorder them too. So you can rewrite your, and this will be a merge conflict because everything was in one file. That's why this might not work the first time. This is in the correct, I dragged them in the correct order. If sometimes you don't check them in the right order, 9 will be down here and 8's up there. This will not work. I can't tell you, I mean, it literally took me hours to get the whole drag and dropping down the right order to not tell me there's a merge conflict because I'm trying to check things in the right order. And sadly, it's actually easier to do this in the command line than it is actually to do it in the GUI. Maybe one day somebody will get this thing together. And then, you know, so I'm doing a rebase. I mean, I'm rebasing the files and I'm squashing these 3 commands together. You have to be smart enough to actually click here on the edit message button right away to actually edit the message that you're going to use. So where in the other one where I actually had to, I told it that I wanted to change the message name and I put the R for reword and then it came up. This thing just automatically assumes that if you clicked on that edit message, this is what your reword's going to be and it's going to run all those commands for you behind the scenes. Again, this was not obvious. So what it's going to do is now that I've edited that message, it's going to take that message I gave, take those 4 commits, and it's going to combine them all together. And then again, like it never happened, all those commands, all those commits that I made are all now merged into one. And they're all in here. And as you can see, you know, all my commits are now into that one commit message. So I squashed everything together.
But that doesn't affect them, the individual ones at all? Like it doesn't change their characteristics or anything? Like it's just putting them all together? Like there's aside from it being a little tricky to do it, it doesn't really have any negative connotations? It doesn't hurt anything?
As long as you didn't push it. So again, we're on our local branch. If we were to do this after, and it tells you in source tree warning, if you're doing this and this has already been pushed up, really bad things are going to happen, and you just choose to ignore the warning. And then when you try to push it again, it's going to tell you the heads are not matching, and then you're like, oh, there's a little force button because I don't know what to do now, so I'm just going to hit force. That's when
dangerous.
really bad things. Well, then what's going to happen is people are going to pull down and they're going to get this other master, and it's not going to match what they have. And I don't know what the exact error message is. It's going to give you some horrible error message. And then I know you can recover from it. You can do a merge and you can get it all cleaned up. But anybody that has not done it before will definitely be confused.
That makes sense. It's a lot of extra hassle.
I don't usually like showing rebasing. But there's been a lot of people have asked me lately, like, how do I get rid of like 3 and 4 commits that haven't been sent up because I don't really, either I misspelled it or I don't want it to be 13 commits like Marty had the other day. I want it to be 1. And neither of the tools are very intuitive. Normally the normal reason for rebasing is you've written code. So here, I'll show you a different repository. And this is the main reason why I wanted to show this. So you're down here, right? You're in master. You're down here. You see all this gray stuff ahead of you, which means somebody's done a bunch of stuff later. So what I did here is I actually pulled in 3 different origins, and this is where I'm talking about like how powerful Git is. 3 different people have created forks off this one project. So this is called log.io. It actually uses Node.js, and it sets up file system watchers on your local machine, and then Node sits, there's a listener that listens, and then it pretty much will use like a Node console and dump out all everything you're logging to your log console, and it'll show up in like a in like a browser window. So you can like set up log.io, open up a web browser. Have you ever used this thing? Have you used it, Matt?
No, I've something similar to it.
Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, I love that because you want to see what's, you have a command line app, it's dumping a bunch of debug stuff out. You want to just connect to it and see what it's doing. So instead of like logging in and looking at the log file, you can just watch the raw stream come over. If you got a better one though, I'm looking for a better one. So the point I was trying to make us here is, again, so everybody's familiar with remotes compared to local? So everybody knows what origin is, right? Git push origin master. Everybody's seen the Scott Goo presentation. He's like, hey, let me show you how to deploy to Azure websites in 12 seconds on my Mac at a Microsoft demo, right? So, so origin, normally when you create everything is origin or origin. That name origin is really just a marker. You can call it Bob, you can call it whatever you want. Your teammates are going to hate you when you tell them to push to Bob because they don't have Bob, they have origin. But you can, it is just a name. It is just like your local. Just because you call it master, it's just a name. The remote master is one thing. You can take local Judy and push it to remote origin, and it doesn't care. It's just a bunch of check-ins that occurred over a period of time. I would highly encourage that everybody in the team uses the same names because it's going to cause a lot less confusion. But if you're going to be that person, then you can be that person in Git. It'll allow you to do that. So I really wish there was a Zoom app. So all 3 of these different remote repositories are different forks of the same code base. Sadly enough, they don't even have to be the same code base. You can just add repos from that. You could put GitHub, you could put Git extensions, log.io, and the application you work on at work all in the same repository. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can do that. It's a branch that has stuff that occurred over time. It doesn't. It's just files. So what's happened here is this person, this Magic Dawn person, has gone in and done something in some language that's in Asia somewhere. Hopefully not something offensive. And so what's happened is, normally what would happen is to rebase, if I were to go and make a change, and it happened during this period of time here, like somewhere in the middle, and then I wanted to take my changes and pretend that they occurred after those changes, so I want to apply my changes to someone else's changes after the fact. So normally when you merge, you're merging their changes on top of yours. I want to put mine on top of their changes. That's the entire purpose of rebasing. Is you're going to say, I'm going to pretend like mine, like they did all these other check-ins first, and I'm going to rebase my changes on top of their changes and pretend like it's a continuous set of of code that's being written, instead of having the whole weaving line back and forth deal. Okay? But again, you can only do that until, well, you should really only do that until you push it up to master. Once it's pushed, you have what you have. The big thing, does anybody have any questions on that? The big thing that I try pushing, and I'm going to show you a variation of this. Has anybody ever heard of Git flow? Nobody?
I've heard of it, but I haven't done it.
So has anybody ever done branch per feature or branch per requirement? So 2, and you've done that in Git, or you did it in TFS? So in TFS, have you ever had this problem where you have 2 branches now and you load the wrong Visual Studio up and you make a bunch of changes for a day and you realize that it's not in the right, yeah. That's one of the reasons why I really hate TFS. I love Git because it's going to do it in place. Now, granted, if you had to make changes in 2 different branches, now you have this thing of remembering to close Visual Studio and coming back and forth. But I worked in the wrong branch for days in TFS and then realized that I had to now go and put that stuff in the other repo because I was in the wrong TFS. Because Visual Studio is not smart enough to say, hey, you're in this branch for this particular solution name. No, it's just the same solution name. It just says, hey, here's your solution. And if you're not smart enough to mouse over wherever you got to mouse over to get the magic fully qualified path, you're kind of SOL. That's probably why you should probably just do Node, right? Visual Studio's last year. Um, so what we're doing is on our project is every single sprint we start a new sprint called Sprint 1 release or Sprint 2 release. Every single time we sprint number and then release. And then what happens is at the end of the last sprint, everything's merged in. That's now we don't touch master, which is a different problem when we onboard people. So it's my fault. Huh? So at the end of every single week, the build master pushes everything into develop, and then what happens is at the beginning of the new week, a new branch is created called Sprint 2 release or Sprint 3 release, and then everybody is creating. We're doing branch per user just to make it easier because we're switching between features too quickly. So every single person has their own branch, and the nice thing is even if you can't even compile, there's no reason why you should not push to the server at the end of the day because you can't break anybody else. There's none of this thing where like in SVN or TFS, if you check something in, you've busted everybody. You're done. Like, the 450, well, we still have one guy that did that once. 450 checks in, breaks the build. But I mean, normally if you push into your branch and you don't touch anything else, then you're good. And what's nice is everybody's moving along. You're in, 4 or 5 people. Yes, it's a mess and because you see these 5 lines growing and everybody's doing check-ins. But if somebody else is working on a dependent feature, and you want to verify it works, you can make sure your stuff is checked in first, branch their stuff into your branch, compile it, run it. If it doesn't work and it breaks you, you just reset your branch back before you did the merge and move on with your day and tell the person either find a new job or figure out how to code. So I mean, and even if you were to commit and go on, for another half a day, and that person's check-in is there, you can still, until you push, as long as you don't push it to the origin, you can go and kill out that check-in like it never happened. So even with that interactive rebase, you can just, if you the thing where it showed all the different branches. So if I go here, I don't know if this will actually work, but so if I say this and I say rebase. Right, and I'm not going to actually, hold on. Rebase, show options. Oh, there's not enough commits. Here, I'm in the middle of the rebase. I'm going to abort it. Let me bring up that other repository. So if I want to rebase this, no op because it's not.
Paul's finding that
Yeah.
the most powerful thing about Git is the fact that
You can screw it up.
you don't have to keep track of TFS and Subversion. You always had to keep track of where you were branching from, where you were merging to, because if they didn't go back to the same parent, you had problems. But in Git, if somebody else is working on something, it doesn't matter how they got to where their branch. If you want something from there, you can merge it directly into yours. The beauty of it is you can merge both ways, and when those 2 branches get merged back into a central one, it's okay. It's not going to give you a bunch of merge conflicts because you already did the merge one way or another, and now you're trying to merge the same. Subversion does that all the time. If you merge something in earlier in a branch or in your line of development, and then you try and merge it again later, it screams and gives you a whole bunch of merge conflicts about stuff you've already merged into the branch. It gets much better about knowing what the true delta is, and it just merges.
Let's just say you had 20 check-ins here, right? Okay, and these all had different hashes. If you literally wanted to make a check-in disappear during a rebase, you literally just delete it. And during the rewrite, it's literally going to take that check-in out of the existence like it never happened. I'm telling you, it's just like literally you put them in the trunk. It just never happened. And that's, but again, it's one of those things where even I get scared with interactive rebase and I do a Control-C, Control-V of the repo because I'm just like, I don't know. But I mean, until you physically do commit, and not abort, nothing happens. So like you saw the 6 times I got stuck in the middle of an interactive rebase and it failed, you just hit abort. Just like a merge. I've gotten merges where you get like the 9th file in and you're just like, I'm not feeling good about this merge. So you just abort the merge and you move on with your day until even after you did your merge, until you commit the merge, it still has not happened. You can still roll the whole thing back. And that's why normally what I recommend is when you're doing a merge, and you know there might be some merge conflict, create a temporary branch off your branch. So in other words, let's go back to test, right? So let's just say that I know, because I would if I tried to merge this back, if I tried merging master and test, I know there's going to be a merge conflict. So I'm in test, and I want to create a new branch, and I want to call it test merge, and then I can eventually kill this. So I created a new branch here called test merge, right? And I'm in test merge, and then I want to merge my master in here. No, I want to bring master into test merge. So I want to take this master, these 4 commits, and I want to bring them back into test. Because remember, test actually has, test is only going to have this 3rd check-in. It's going to be way back here. If I go back to my thing, so see, this I'm in test. It only has the first 3 check-ins. So I want to merge this in, merge into current branch. This is the stupidest wording, right? So this is where I think a lot of people get confused. I'm in test merge, right? I chose master, blue, and I say merge into current branch, and you get to choose master, but does this wording seem reversed to you? Like, does it seem like it should be saying merge into current branch, test merge, and not master? The reason why this is saying this is because if there were like 7 or 8 different check-ins and branches at the same spot, it would give you the list of all the branches that you have to choose from at that particular case. So the wording, in my opinion, kind of sucks. But if I had multiple branches there, I could choose master, I could choose all kinds of crazy stuff here. So, and again, the way we're doing it, our project, our rule is that we're doing whoever's doing the build master, if you're bringing it back into the release branch, you're bringing it back in develop. We always do always create new merge commit, even if we know it's going to be good, because we want to physically see that those 8 things occurred. It's creating the diff merge of everything that's occurred. And at that point, you can go and kill the other branch. Granted, you'll lose all the micro check-ins, but at that point, when you're at release 17, you could really care less about the 17,000 check-ins that happen in release 2, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah, well. Yeah. So I'm going to create a new, and it just actually, that's no conflict. That was interesting. I actually expected a conflict. But there was no conflict, so that's good. So now what I can do is I'm like, okay, cool, my merge worked. I'm happy with it. I'm going to go back to test, right? And now because this is a fake, this was a temporary. I could fast forward it now that I know it's going to be safe, I can do it. But because it's technically still going to come from master, I still want new commit. So, and then I'm actually physically going to delete this branch. The reason you should never have to, here's how you know you're deleting a branch and you're safe. If you don't have to check the force button and allows you to delete the branch, that means that everything you've done in that branch is somewhere else in the history and you're never going to lose anything. Normally, if there's no line, here, I'll show you one in a second. So, that branch is now gone. Now it's still, because this has been merged in, it kind of still shows it here. It shows that master was brought into test merge, so I guess I could have fast forwarded that last check-in. But you notice that the marker, you don't see test merge anymore. Ones that would not, like if I tried deleting this is, it's technically a branch, but it's if I were to want to delete this, and it was a local branch, you would have to do a force, because at this point you physically are deleting stuff that is nowhere else, and you're physically saying, I don't care about this code anymore, it's dead. I usually discourage that unless there's some valid reason why you don't want it. It's not taking up a lot of space. The nice thing about Git, I I don't remember the exact, there's a way to calculate the number of bytes of overhead, but it's under 192 bytes of data, like with the hashes and the timestamps and all that, plus whatever your data change was, like your file name / and your change. So if you had 3 files, like in this case, I have, this person did 2 different changes to a package JSON file. They did a CoffeeScript file. And this, I would probably guess that this check-in was 2 or 3K total. I mean, you can have just ridiculous number of check-ins, and it's not like it's keeping the file for every single check-in. It's very small. So there's almost no point, unless you're using Unity, that you would have these monster check-ins, like a 256 meg one the other day.
Was it moving the whole core in there with it?
I don't know what happened. I think somebody brought in some assets or something.
We went to Unity, we went to Unity 5, and they had the module for the new light model, and it was 585 megs.
Okay, so you are moving a bulk load, framework load in with it, that check-in.
On that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in someone's, so this was nice. So this person did it in their own personal branch, and they did a branch off of another, like our mainline branch.
All I can say is they must have been on Google Fiber, wherever they were.
Because he tried pulling it down for like 5 hours, and he never got it down. I pulled it down in, I don't know, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I literally went in and destroyed the history. I did a reset. So same with this. So because I've never pushed any of this stuff to master, to origin. So let's say that those 2 merges, I don't want any of that stuff to occur. I want to pretend that merge from master never happened. I can literally go here. This is where it gets scary because you got to kind of know where you're at. This line here is your branch is always the branch to the left. I'm hoping it is in source tree too. Yeah, so your branch is always here, so let's change to master and make sure that's the case in here. Yeah, so see, no.
Yeah, so in source tree it moves.
It didn't move. Let's move back to test. So let's pretend that I did not want these 2 changes to occur. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset. This is also a very scary command if you do it by accident. Reset current branch to here is literally going to take your check-in from wherever you're at and literally just wipe it out like it never happened and put your code back to where you are, and it's literally going to make that thing disappear.
So there's no snapshot of it anywhere, like you can't get it back, right, once you've done that?
No.
Actually, you can't.
Unless if you do a softer mix, it'll leave your files there. But like,
But in the actual Git repo, the commits are still there. There's just no pointer to them. So if you can actually go through the command called reflog, and it shows all references that happen. So if you
until you do a GC.
Yeah, but if you don't do that very often,
Right.
And even then, I think it's like,
gone.
I think the default is like a month before it does garbage collection, something like that. Unless you specify otherwise in the command line or something like that. But yeah, there are commands you can go and get it as long as it hasn't been too long. But eventually the things that don't have pointers to them will get collected and deleted completely. But that's where you start getting into really scary commands that if you don't know what you're doing, you can make things a whole lot worse.
Once I hit this though, you're short of going in and getting it out of the closet,
Dumpster diving.
the dumpster dive. Once I hit this hard reset, I'm telling it, I want to take and go back to this branch. Because all I did is really a merge, I'm not, in this case, I'm just undoing my merges. I didn't like how I did the merge. I'm just resetting that merge. And I ask you now 3 times, are you sure you want to toast your changes? And then, see, I'm back here. So I didn't, because I kind of know what I was doing at that point. I know that all I did was kill 2 different merges, merging the test merge and merging the test. I can then now go and redo my merge. Right? And then reperform, and I have not lost anything here because I know all I did was just toast merges. But I mean, you can go back and toast all kinds of good stuff. Does anybody have any questions before I? Find anything else more insane in here? I can just kind of show you, like, let me show you, demonstrate the whole. So let's create a new. I'll kind of show you like so what Git flow is. So this is the weaving pattern I'm talking about. So I change back to master, and I want to merge back test back in here, so I have the current in master. So now you get the weaving pattern, but now everything's up to date. So where I'm at, as long as in this program, as long as you don't see any white lines, and I don't know what source tree shows, if it would show white, then you know you have your latest. But so then what we do is, you know, we have a new sprint. So we say create new branch, and it's you know, sprint 1. And then from sprint 1 we say create, and everybody else does this on their own. Everybody else creates a sprint 1 Joe, and then we have a create new, and this is sprint 1 Dave.
Are you guys actually creating branches in a common repository or in your own checkout?
If I were to show you the Bitbucket repo, you'll see sprint 1 Joe, sprint 1 Dave, sprint 1 release, and then development, and then master. And that's why I laughed, because I went and wrote documentation for how to use the actual application in a branch, and then when he got master, there's like, here's the README file, and like told him nothing about how to get started. Everything on how to get started was done in sprint 2, but he would not have known to go read the README file from sprint 2.
Sure.
So the poor guy sat there, you know, out in the weeds for half a day, and it just happened to be that Marty was at a meeting that day and I was off or something.
Does Bitbucket have a similar concept of what GitHub does?
Bitbucket, you can actually create branches. So Bitbucket like really loves Git flow, the whole flow of Git flow. What Git flow is pretty much you start and end a feature or a bug. So in other words, if you were to use Atlassian's what's their bug tracking software called? Yeah, is it just Jira? I mean, I thought there was something else. I think you can use Grasshopper too, right? I think from Grasshopper you can create a story, and from that story you can create a.
Yeah, that's.
So it's all under called Jira now. So you know, in Jira you can actually, from your task in your swim lane, there's actually a create branch button, and then you can it will actually go out to your repo and create a branch from wherever you tell it to create the branch from, and it will create a branch specifically to your. It'll use Git flow, and you say if your bug number is AC-14, it'll create a branch called AC-14 off of the branch, and then you'll work in that branch, and then when you mark it as complete, I don't know if it'll remerge back into the master or if the build master's responsibility is to do that.
I would hope not. That seems risky. No, but my question though is the difference between Bitbucket and GitHub, right? The way my company does GitHub, all our branches aren't in the same repo, right? If you
So you're doing pull requests.
Repository.
So you all have forks, and you're all.
Our primary repository has master, and then whatever release
right.
is, that's it. And then when I'm ready to do a work, I actually clone it in GitHub, and I do all my work in my fork.
Right.
And so my personal branches go into my fork, but they never make.
And then you do a pull request from my name / request 17 to please not the master.
Well, it depends on.
Okay.
It depends on how you're using
Right.
it,
I know.
mean,
Right, yeah, and that's why I always tell people, and that's, I don't know if you guys want to go over pull requests in general. What really throws people off with pull requests is I always tell people, if you're going to do a pull request, always create a branch, because anything that you do after your pull request continues to show up in the pull request. In other words, if you just used your master and you say pull my master and your master, and you made 3 check-ins and those are the 3 you want, and then it took them a week and you've done 15 more check-ins, those 15 more check-ins in GitHub show up as part of the pull request, but you never intended them to be there. So I always say create a branch, create those 3, that check-in, have them do the pull request on that branch, take your branch and merge it back into another branch, or back in your master, or back in wherever, and continue on with your life. And that way they are isolated. And then what's nice is, let's say they say, well, you still missed something in your pull request. You can go recheck that out, add more stuff to that branch, and then just tell them, okay, I fixed it, and it'll just automatically show up in the pull request. And it's kind of it would take me 15 minutes to set one of those up, but they're really amazing set of functionality, but people don't know how to use them. And that's, pull requests, again, it's the whole, like, you have one build master. The problem that we've run into is people don't know where they're at sometimes, and they go and they do a check-in until the sprint 1 release or sprint 4 release, and we wanted them in their release, and luckily that one guy did a 500 meg check-in. Luckily he was in his own branch. If he would have been in the release branch, I would have had to have done the, hey, don't do this force thing, and it's going to screw everybody up, and I would have had to have done that, and then have everybody resync all their repos and get their heads back in order, literally their heads in the repo back in order. And
that's about the case where you would want that ref log, right?
Right.
Somebody forced the wrong thing. Fortunately, it hasn't been garbage collected. You would grab the old commit hash, and you're just basically throwing their incorrect thing away.
But, you know, and the other thing, do you ever cherry pick?
Oh yeah, quite a bit.
And that's another thing I love, and it's scary that it actually puts your person's thing on it, but they did the original commit, so I guess it's good enough.
You want that trackability, sure.
Yeah. I mean, do you cherry pick? You're not a big fan of cherry picking?
I don't use a lot, but when I need to.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I've done it has been like working on the Linux kernel, and of course you got, you know,
Yeah,
17 different
I usually leave that
branches
to
of the Linux
weekends.
kernel. So, you know, a lot of times you'll get a fix in the 2 dot, you know, whatever.
Right.
And you want just that fix. You don't want all the history leading up to it, so then you just cherry pick.
I've cherry picked because, again, if we've totally hosed up a branch, and then we want to cherry pick the changes out and put them in another branch. Pretty much an undo branch. But we still want the changes, but so you move them out. And
It's basically the same thing as a rebase where you're
It
throwing a
is.
bunch of stuff away.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can go on with this stuff all day. I mean, Git's great stuff, but it's also scary stuff. And the terms suck. Nobody uses the same term.
So always make sure, like, always check what branch, always check where you are before you make a big.
And that's very easy to do. Well,
Because it seems like, I mean, I've heard of this happening other places too. Like, it's where, you know, you merge something in the wrong place, and like, so it doesn't seem like it's very obvious where you always are sitting. So you always need to double check.
you can always just do an ls or and find out where you're at in the repo. Or, you know, if you're using, I guess you could have just typed in git status, will probably tell you too, right? You always want to merge into your branch or into a branch of your branch. You never want to go the other way. You never want to automatically screw somebody else up by pushing into their, like, in other words, you don't go and change the Dave's branch and then put Joe's stuff into it. You pull Dave's stuff in, and that way you know it's clean at that point. So if you say, hey, pull it back, they're not going to get a merge conflict unless they go on for another day and a half and then decide at that point to pull in your code. Then they're going to have a whole bunch of merge conflicts. But literally at the end of the day, if I were to go in and pull your stuff into my branch and then resolve any conflicts, and then before you coded any more check-ins, if you were just branch that back and do this deal where you get the lines weaving back and forth, you're never ever going to get a merge conflict. And you can still have unstaged check-ins as long as they're not part of the files that were changed during the merge.
Yeah, I think most of the complication from these kind of things comes from the fact that, you know, the workflow items are really outside of the scope of Git, right? Git is the mechanism.
Git is just where you're storing the stuff.
Yeah, Git is the mechanism, and everything else is the policy, and how do you use it, and what branch names you use, and who can merge, and everything else. That's completely independent of Git. Git will let you slice your risks all day long, but then, you know, you've got to really figure out what works for you and your team to build the
So
policy.
Source Tree app is really cool visually. I could not figure out how to resolve a merge conflict in Source Tree. Maybe I'm just challenged. I find, has anybody ever used Beyond Compare? Anybody?
That's my go-to.
You've never used Beyond Compare? No? So,
Yeah.
let me show you what a merge conflict would look like. So I'm going to create 10. So I created a thing called 10 in the master. I'm going to change to test. I'm going to create 11, right? Is that spelled right, hopefully? Okay, so I'm going to create a merge conflict, right? So right now I have a merge conflict. I have a line here that I went 9, 10, and then in my test branch I have 9, 11. So without a doubt, if I do a merge right now and I try to take master, I'll do this twice. I'll do it in this, and I'll show you in Source Tree app how I can't figure out how to get it to work. So I'm going to merge. It doesn't really matter what you pick at this point, because unless you go in here and say use non-default merge strategy, screw you, I'm taking my change, I don't care about you anymore, which you can do, you're going to get a merge conflict. shoot, what was I saying? Oh, darn, merge conflict. We knew that. And what's nice is it's saying, hey, there's a merge conflict. You want to resolve it now. It brings up the list of every single thing that's happened. Now, if you know that that thing is totally hosed and there's no way you're going to be able to fix it, you can literally just right-click and say, take mine, take theirs. Like, in other words, I know that theirs is more close to being correct than mine, and I'll just fix it up. So here, Beyond Compare does a three-way merge, and Dan is not here, but he does not like this. He finds it unusable.
So this is an external three-way merge utility?
Yeah, it's $50, and actually it's worth $50, and now it works on Linux and Mac.
Yeah, I've played with some of the graphical three-way merge utilities, but not
You do the whole dash by hand thing? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, most of the time I'm on an SSH link running Emacs.
Yeah.
That's an easy way to work.
So.
Once you're used to it,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of getting used to it.
So this one is so bad it can't even guess which one that you want. Like sometimes it'll just kind of say you probably want 11 or 10, and it kind of try to fills in. This one is like you're so screwed. I don't even know what to do. So then you pick. Do I want the blue side, which is yours, or the red side, which is theirs? And then once you get down here, you're done. You hit Control-S save, and then you exit out, and it says you've resolved. You want to commit now. And again, even if I hit yes, I can undo. I can cancel out of here. Because there's no change. That's why you don't see any files. I can cancel out of here, and it won't commit. So I'm going to cancel. It's going to say, hey, you're in the middle of a merge conflict. It did not. Did it really commit? Oh, because there was no new files, it's not going to tell me in the middle of a commit. So same here. So if I go in here and I try to merge, it knows that there's merge conflicts, and then I don't know what to do in here. I mean, there's some stuff down here about resolve conflicts. But what am I supposed to do? Restart merge, and then, I mean, like, just what happened here? And I don't have no freaking. Here's the dash thing. Here's you. You could probably go in here and fix this.
Yep. I
Yep.
see that all around.
Yeah, and then so I go back into here and I go, I have no clue what this thing just did, and I just I abort
The
them.
end of the file are all
I go and abort the merge because I have no. I can't figure out how to do. Do you know how to do a merge in a merge conflict in? Yeah. Okay.
Question though, how frequently in real use do you get merge conflicts?
Oh, you want the best one? If you want to be the best, if you want to get the best one, get the guy who doesn't know how to actually use the braces on this right line versus the next line thing in Visual Studio, and do a Control KD in Visual Studio and do a check-in. You'll get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
Oh, okay.
merges.
Don't do that.
How often does it happen in real life? In Unity a lot
Oh, yeah.
because of the asset files.
Well, but now,
In
those
CS
applications-
proj files, every single time two people are in the same project at the same time. Because it's XML, and alphabetically is how it creates the nodes. So like if you're creating files in the same alphanumeric ranges, it just says, I don't know what to do. So you end up doing even worse. You can't take one side or the other. You have to like copy and paste and like splice the file together. Or your way would probably, in that case, your way would be easier because you're just removing the dash and going, I need both of these files. I can't.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very dependent on the workload, because typically in the C and Python stuff that I do, there's very little, because most of our fixes are our stuff is going to be a lot more bug fixes than new development, and most of that's fairly isolated. So just curious how often people, in different workloads actually.
In Visual Studio, web projects especially, you can get ridiculous amounts.
Really?
Yeah.
Seems like it would have.
You think it's bad now. Microsoft made it almost impossible back when they decided in Visual Studio 2005. So many people are too dumb to figure out SourceSafe and the web projects. We're going to just not have a CS proj file and just let you have a loose cannon file stuff in a folder, because that's going to that made it real great. You remember those? Yeah. That's when I got out of web. Never went back. So in this case, I know for this particular file, I in my branch and test is the latest. So literally, this is what's called a non-default merge strategy. I am going to choose ours